So, like many people from Boston, I'm from a large Irish Catholic family. My mother is the youngest of 13 children, and I have about 60 first cousins. Another thing that runs through our large family is Alzheimer's, and every one, save two of my mother's siblings, has died of Alzheimer's, and it's very sad. And we are watching my mother like a hawk right now. She gets very tired of us saying, "How's Sudoku going?" So I'm not very close with many of my cousins because many of them are older than me, by much older than me, and some of them are actually older than my mother. But one of my cousins is my cousin Diane. She is the perfect combination of cool and kind, and she did things like when she would babysit me, she'd show up on her Harley, and my mom would say, "Don't let him touch the Harley." And once she went away, we'd get on the Harley. So she was so cool. I was in her wedding when I was 6 in 1976. I had a perfect mint green tuxedo with olive drab ruffles, and her whole wedding party looked like the Manson family, only artistic and not so murdery. So Diane and I have gotten along forever. And when her mother finally succumbed to Alzheimer's, she took care of her. And we also, in my family, last a very long time. Her mother had Alzheimer's for 14 years. And if you think taking care of somebody for 14 years with Alzheimer's is easy, it's not. And I am not cool or kind enough to ever take care of my mother with Alzheimer's, and she knows it. And my brothers have been instructed to not let me make any decisions about my mother should she succumb. But when my Aunt Sis, my cousin Diane's mother, finally passed away, Diane needed a break, and she went on many, many different trips. One of the trips, because she's so cool and kind, was one that she took with me, and we went to Colorado to visit her daughter, who was being promoted to a colonel in the Army. So we went to Colorado, and we had a wonderful time, and we told stories about her mother at night, her Aunt Sis. Now, if anybody has Alzheimer's patients in their family, they know that there are a couple things that they do a lot. One of which is anytime things are confusing, they seem to make them into crimes. So if something is missing in their house, they think someone stole it. If there's some loud noise outside, they think that there's an explosion. For Aunt Sis, this was anytime she saw a blue sedan go by, she would say to my cousin, Di, your father, he's driving by. He's got a naked woman in the back seat, and they're crossing state lines. We need to call the police." Now, we'd all heard this story many, many times, but Diane decided to repeat it for some of the people we were talking with. And I don't know if any of you have heard about this, but sometimes men have theories about things when they're a room full of women, and they can't help themselves, and they say, "I've got a theory about that, so I did that." And I said, I think that sometimes people with Alzheimer's remember things in the past, and they bring it back up. And I said, when, your mom would say Uncle Rich was going by with a naked lady in the car and crossing state lines, do you think that she was talking about the time that your dad was having an affair with his secretary, and he crossed over into Vermont, and Nana called the state police and had her dragged back? I thought it was a good theory. The people in the room thought that that was a good theory. My cousin Diane had never heard that story. So the betrayal wasn't just that she found out that her father was a real womanizer before she was born, but also that her cousin would tell mixed company that this was happening. So she said, "In the morning, I'm going to have to call your mom." And I said, "In the morning, I'm going to have to call my mom first." So it was very cool because everybody had been gone for a long time. And her mother and her father had a very long marriage after that, after they had gotten back together. And Diane said, "Well, how did you know about this story?" And I said, "Well, she's about 15 years older than me and 15 years younger than my mom. And my mom was about 15 when her mother came and went to live with my Nana, who was the one who called the state police. Don't mess with an Irish woman from Ireland. Just don't." So I said, "It was about 15 years. She said, "Oh, well, that's how you knew about this story." And I said, "Well, yes, that's how I knew about this story. But we have about 59 other cousins who also know this story. In fact, you and your brothers are the only ones who don't know this story." And this story is basically the story of how 9 months before Diane was born, her grandmother called her father and said, "You'd better get back with your mother." And when they made up, they also made my cousin Diane. So I think a betrayal can be terrible, a betrayal can be hilarious, and a betrayal can also make the coolest cousin you ever had. Thank you very much.